The sands of time do not always conceal, they sometimes whisper. And if you listen closely, not with your ears, but with the bones of your ancestors, and the dreams that flicker between sleep and waking, you may hear it a tremor beneath the surface of history, as if something once vast and luminous was buried not by accident, but by design. There are stories older than any nation, older than parchment, older than temple or tongue. They pulse beneath the epics of Genesis and Gilgamesh, hiding in plain sight like the bones of giants beneath cathedral floors. Stories of a world not broken by nature but shattered by intention, not humbled by water, but silenced by it. And among these stories, one stands tall and trembling, the tale of the Great Flood. Not merely a myth, not merely a metaphor, but a veil drawn hastily across an era humanity was never meant to remember. We've been taught to see the flood as punishment, a divine cleansing, a watery reset. But what if it was something else entirely? What if it was not heaven's wrath, but man's design or something beyond man? What if it was a controlled collapse, a drowning of memory, a washing away not of sin, but of science? For within the shattered remnants of the world's earliest myths, from the Ziusudra tablets of Sumer to the drowned chants of the Hopi, from the ancient Vedas of Bharat to the stony silences of Tiwanaku, there echoes a pattern too precise to be coincidence, too haunting to be dismissed. A pattern that points always to a time before the deluge and to a people, not primitive, not broken, but exalted, wise, builders of monuments that even now defy replication, keepers of a sacred knowledge that threaten the powers to come. A supercivilization. This was not a flood of rain. It was a flood of forgetting. They say history is written by the victors, but what if the victors rewrote the world itself? Imagine a force so determined to erase its predecessor that it chose not just fire or sword, but the sea, salt water, the ancient solvent of all things. A liquid veil cast across continents, dragging temples into abyssal silence, pulling down towers encoded with stellar secrets, drowning libraries that sang in forgotten tongues. The Atlanteans, the Lemurians, the builders of Nan Madol, the priest kings of Mu, names given to phantoms, half remembered in myth because that is all we are allowed to hold. Not records, not maps, but myths. Stories hushed, wrapped in ridicule, sealed behind the cold certainty of coincidence and natural disaster. The rational mind may scoff, but the soul knows when something is amiss. The soul remembers. For how else do you explain it? Why do cultures separated by oceans and eons speak of a flood that came not from rain, but from the stars? Why do their gods leave just before the waters rise, promising one day to return? Why do their ruins stone aligned with celestial mathematics? Modern tools barely grasp sit beneath layers of sediment, dated far beyond the histories we are told to believe. We are not the first, and perhaps we were never meant to know that. There is a reason the oldest structures on Earth are silent. Why the pyramids speak only through shadow and angle. Why the oldest stones bear no chisel marks, no inscriptions, as if their builders feared not time, but misinterpretation, as if they knew their story would be stolen. And so, the Great Flood is remembered not as it was, but as it was permitted to be told. But something is stirring. The waters have receded not in ocean, but in mind. The ruins are not rising, they were always there. It is we who are rising, now beginning to see, to question, to remember. This is not about Atlantis alone. It is not about Noah, nor Ziusudra, nor Manu. It is about the sacred pattern beneath them all, a pattern that speaks not of punishment, but of preservation, of knowledge hidden beneath waves to protect it from those who would abuse it, or from those who already did. So we begin not at the flood, but before it, before the erasure, in the radiant age where stone sang, where stars dictated architecture, where energy flowed not through wires, but through will, in the epoch of the supercivilization. And if we dare to look not as historians, but as seekers, we may yet find what the flood tried to take from us. Not simply memory, but blueprint. Not myth, but manual. An ancient future lost, and now perhaps ready to be reawakened. If these ancient whispers are stirring something deep within you, give this video a like. It's more than support, it's a sign that you're beginning to remember. Long before the ink of history dried on the scrolls of kings and conquerors, there existed an age that breathed in silence, a golden chapter suspended in mystery, scattered across the megaliths and myths of forgotten lands. It was an age not defined by iron or empire, but by harmony, a civilization so attuned to the natural and the cosmic that its every structure, symbol, and ceremony echoed a hidden geometry, a language of resonance lost to the clamor of modernity. But this age did not fall. It was felled. And at the center of its erasure stands the Great Flood, not as a chaotic force of nature, but as a deliberate veil, a vast, deliberate inundation, engineered whether by celestial hands, rogue priesthoods, or powers we still do not understand, to bury a civilization that had become too powerful, too luminous, or perhaps too dangerous. Let us begin where history resists us most, in the contradiction between mainstream chronologies and the earth itself. At Göbekli Tepe in modern-day Turkey, we find monolithic architecture dated to over 11,600 years ago, predating all known agriculture, city building, and organized religion. But what shocks more than its age is its intent. Perfectly carved T-shaped pillars aligned with stellar constellations, bearing reliefs of animals and symbols whose meanings still elude us. And it was not destroyed. It was buried consciously, ritually, sealed beneath layers of sediment by the very people who built it. Why would a culture of such skill hide its own creation? Look deeper. Across the sea in Peru, the site of Sacsayhuaman defies our most basic understanding of stonework. Here, cyclopean walls interlock with no mortar stones weighing dozens of tons, fit together with such precision that not even a blade of grass can slip between them. And yet, we are told this was done with copper chisels and slave labor. The explanation phrased beneath scrutiny. In Baalbek, Lebanon, the stone of the pregnant woman, rests an ancient monolith weighing over 1,000 tons, quarried and positioned in antiquity, with no known means of transport. In Japan, the Ishino-Hoden floats as though weightless, carved entirely from bedrock, its purpose forgotten. In India, the Kailasa temple, seemingly descended from stone rather than built upward, was carved from a single mountain as if by divine hands. These are not primitive works. These are signatures, but the true cipher lies not just in stone, but in stories, and they are remarkably consistent. From the ancient Sumerians, we hear of Eridu, the first city built by gods who came from the sky. Their king lists stretch thousands of years back into the mist, listing rulers with lifespans that boggle the mind. And then the flood. In the Eridu Genesis, Ziusudra, warned by the god, Enki builds a boat to survive a deluge sent by the others, those who wished to destroy mankind. From the Hebrew Torah and Christian Old Testament, the narrative echoes Noah, the ark, the wrath of heaven, the washing away of wickedness. But the details blur when compared to older Mesopotamian texts. The flood, once divine retribution, becomes a tool of erasure. The Vedic traditions of India speak of Manu, the first man saved from the waters by a divine fish, Matsya, who warns him of the coming cataclysm. The texts speak not only of survival, but of knowledge preserved in the Ark seeds, wisdom, sacred texts. The Hopi people of North America tell of the destruction of the Third World by water after humanity strayed from the path. Survivors were saved in underground shelters by the ant people, enigmatic beings sometimes depicted with elongated skulls and large eyes. The Mesoamerican codices speak of prior suns, worlds that rose and fell, each destroyed by elements: fire, wind, jaguars, and flood. The Maya, the Aztec, the Olmec all remembered something vast lost beneath the sea. Across the globe, these echoes converge not in detail, but in direction. They speak not just of punishment, but of preservation, of ancient knowledge either saved or stolen before the waters came, of temples turned to tombs not by time, but by tide. And so we return to the flood, not as an isolated event, but as a reset mechanism. A planetary system's emergency shutdown, the deluge that came to silence the harmonic technology of the old world, to drown the song that once rang through pyramids and stone circles like a bell struck from the stars. What did they know? What power did they hold? We see hints in their obsessions with vibration and resonance, cymatic patterns encoded in sacred geometry, temples built to amplify sound, to channel celestial alignments, to harness energy that modern science is only beginning to rediscover. The pyramids of Giza are not tombs, they are frequency devices tuned to the earth itself. The alignments of Teotihuacan mirror Orion. Stonehenge was not merely a calendar, but a harmonic portal. But with power comes danger. Perhaps it was not hubris that led to the fall, but misuse. Or perhaps it was fear. Fear by others of what humanity was becoming. Who then engineered the flood? Some say it was the Anunnaki sky beings who once ruled and then withdrew. Others whisper of planetary shifts, of the passing of Nibiru, a rogue celestial body whose gravitational pull disrupted the Earth's crust. Others still believe it was a shadow priesthood, seeded from Orion or Sirius, who turned the keys of knowledge into weapons. But what matters more than who is why. The flood buried more than cities, it buried context. It broke the chain. It severed memory from its source. The survivors scattered, traumatized, diminished, retold fragments, built in imitation, encoded memory into myth. And the myths over time were stripped of their teeth. What remains today is an echo, a murmur beneath the soil, beneath the sea, beneath the surface of our knowing. But the stones still speak. The stars still align. And the flood, though it took, the world could not erase the soul of it. Do you feel this goes far beyond what we were ever taught in school? Leave a comment below, share your intuition, your questions, or a strange memory you can't quite explain. We read every whisper you leave behind. And to understand the flood merely as an event is to miss its truest dimension. It was not just water that fell upon the earth. It was forgetfulness. It was myth alchemized into metaphor. It was a veil woven in liquid, cast not only over continents, but over consciousness. And yet, like all sacred veils, it was designed to be lifted by those who remember how to see. For the flood in every tradition is not only an ending, it is a reset. A symbolic severance between one world and the next. The old world, vibrant with impossible technologies and cosmological harmonies, was submerged. The new world arose disoriented, grasping at fragments. But even within the broken shards of memory, the essence survived through symbols. Symbols, the final language of the ancient ones. Immune to erosion, unbound by alphabet. They encode entire cosmologies in a single glyph. And they are everywhere, carried like seeds from the drowned world, into temples, scrolls, lullabies, and dreams. Take the serpent coiled across continents and epochs. In Sumer, it slithers through the tales of Enki and the Abzu, the deep primeval waters of knowledge. In Egypt, it crowns the brow of pharaohs as the Uraeus, the awakened Kundalini. In Mesoamerica, it soars as Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, bringer of knowledge, the one who promised to return. Even in Eden, it is the whisperer of forbidden wisdom, the tempter not to sin, but to remember. This is no coincidence. The serpent is not evil, it is memory coiled and sleeping, waiting for the water to recede. Then there is the ark, or rather, the archetype of preservation, a vessel of sacred knowledge, a womb of rebirth. Whether it is Noah's ark, Manu's boat, or Ziusudra's box of survival, the story repeats. A chosen one is warned, a flood is foretold, a container is built, and within it, the seed of a new world. Sometimes animals, sometimes scrolls, sometimes the 7 sages, but always something more than flesh consciousness itself. These arks are not boats alone. They are metaphors for temples, for DNA, for stone libraries encoded with light. The Great Pyramid itself may be such a container, its chambers' proportions and resonant geometry, tuned not to entomb, but to preserve. A lighthouse beneath the flood, whose message would only be understood millennia later, by those who had relearned to listen with the soul. Even the number 7 pulses through the narrative as a sacred current. 7 days of flood, 7 sages who survive, 7 chakras, 7 tones in the harmonic scale, 7 gates to the underworld in Sumerian myth, 7 years of preparation before destruction. The number does not speak, it sings. It is the frequency of transition, encoded into every spiritual system that dares to remember the world before the fall. And what of the mountain? The place where the ark lands. It is not just a high point, it is the axis mundi, the world tree, the cosmic pillar that connects above and below, Ararat, Meru, Sinai. Every tradition places its survivors not randomly, but at a peak, the symbolic intersection of heaven and earth, where one may once again receive the law, the teaching, the blueprint of how to rebuild. This is not storytelling, it is encoding. It is as if the survivors of the supercivilization, stripped of their machines and temples, chose to encode their truths into archetypes, knowing that only in dream, myth, and metaphor could these seeds survive the salt of time. They did not write history. They wrote key symbols that would one day fit the locks of reawakened minds. Consider the myth of Atlantis as handed down by Plato, not as legend, but as legacy. A continent of great power, said to be ruled by 10 kings descended from a divine bloodline. Their technology was vast, their structures impossible. But they grew proud, we are told, and in a single day and night, they vanished beneath the sea. But Atlantis was not simply a city. It was a memory palace of an entire epoch, a symbol of a human potential too vast to be allowed to remain. And in the symbol of its sinking lies the deeper truth, not just loss, but exile, not just punishment, but concealment, and perhaps even protection. Other symbols linger in the margins, half buried like tablets beneath silt. The pine cone held in Sumerian reliefs, mimicking the pineal gland, the seat of inner sight. The eye of Horus, whose parts match the regions of the human brain, suggesting a map not of the heavens, but of consciousness itself. The labyrinth found from Crete to Peru, reflecting the journey inward, before any outward discovery can be made. All these speak of a civilization, not merely advanced in engineering, but in awareness, one that understood the body as temple, the mind as portal, the earth as living text. One that did not separate science from spirit, but saw them as threads of the same cosmic tapestry. And so the flood did not just drown people or cities. It drowned symbolic literacy. It severed our access to the sacred lens through which the ancients read the world. And yet, they foresaw even this. Like master gardeners, they scattered symbolic seeds across the soil of history, knowing some would bloom again in distant ages. This age, For now, as humanity stands on the cusp of technological rebirth, AI, quantum fields, DNA manipulation, the symbols stir once more. The myths no longer sleep. The dreams grow louder. The waterline is receding, and the supercivilization they tried to erase is beginning to remember itself through us. If you're sensing a deeper layer behind the symbols, hit subscribe. What we've uncovered today is only the beginning. The floodwaters may have retreated long ago, but the deluge of forgetfulness continues. In the modern world, we walk among the ruins of that which we do not understand. We take photographs beside megaliths that defy explanation. We fly drones over deserts where stone cities sleep beneath sand. We analyze symbols with machines that cannot comprehend the soul behind them. And yet, without knowing it, we are surrounded by echoes of the age that came before. The supercivilization that was buried not just by water, but by design. But these echoes are not inert. They are invitations. To ignore them is to remain adrift in a world that appears fractured, rootless, severed from its source. To answer them is to begin remembering what we were and what we are still becoming. The real-world implications of this buried truth stretch far beyond archaeology. They reach into the very core of our spiritual, technological, and existential identity. For if we truly allow the possibility that a supercivilization once existed, one that mastered sound, resonance, harmony with the earth, cosmic alignment, and the inner sciences of the soul, then we must confront an uncomfortable question. What if everything we call progress is merely a reinvention of what was once lost? From quantum entanglement to sacred geometry, from vibrational healing to zero-point energy. The breakthroughs that dazzle our laboratories today often seem like rediscoveries principles once inscribed in stone and encoded in myth. And yet, rather than integrate this ancient wisdom, modern systems shun it, ridicule it, dismiss it as pseudoscience or fantasy. But what if that dismissal is intentional? For to recognize that the ancients wielded true power derived not from domination, but from harmony, is to destabilize the entire architecture of our current worldview. It would mean that our version of history is incomplete, even deceptive, that the religions, governments, and educational systems that frame our reality are built upon foundations of curated amnesia. It would mean that we have been trained to forget. The Great Flood, then, was not a one-time event, but a metaphor for a perpetual mechanism, a washing away of anything that threatens centralized control. Whether through literal cataclysms, cultural annihilation, or systemic suppression, the story repeats. The wisdom of the heart, the technology of the soul, the language of the stars, each silenced in turn, each mocked into obscurity, and yet it rises. Today we are witnessing the quiet resurrection of that buried knowledge. People across the planet are awakening not just spiritually, but energetically. There is a swelling hunger to understand the frequency of reality, to heal with vibration, to meditate not as escape, but as exploration. Ancient practices once confined to dusty temples are returning through breathwork, plant medicines, harmonic therapy, geometric activation. The very stones that were drowned are now being uncovered, as if the earth itself has chosen this moment to remember. And with them come warnings. For the story of the flood is not just past, it is prophetic. When a civilization forgets its harmony, when it turns sacred science into war machines, when it exchanges balance for control, it invokes the same pattern, the same reckoning. The flood is the consequence, not of wrath, but of dissonance. It is a universal recalibration, and we, too, are approaching the edge of the waters. Climate change, biodiversity collapse, psychic disintegration, cultural fragmentation. These are not random crises. They are symptoms of a species that has lost its song. But if we listen to the myths we remember, the flood does not come without a warning. The ark is always offered. The teachings are always preserved somewhere. Perhaps this time, the ark is not wood or stone. Perhaps it is a consciousness, a resonance we must rediscover within ourselves. To do so, we must look not only to the stars or the machines, but inward. We must learn, as the ancients did, that real power is not force but frequency, that buildings aligned with solstices and stars were not just markers of time, but transmitters of intention, that the sacred names carved into obelisks and sung into chambers were not superstitions, but sonic activations, prayers built into the earth's grid. In short, we must remember that we are not separate from the world. We are the world, dreaming itself awake again. This is why the symbols have returned, why the old myths are stirring, why those who once called Atlantis fantasy are now questioning sunken coastlines and pre-ice age ruins. The flood has receded, and in its place, a new vision is surfacing. But this time, we are the architects. We have the choice to rebuild not as the conquerors of Earth, but as its co-creators. We can choose to align our technologies with natural law, to balance logic with intuition, to restore the broken bridge between science and spirit. The ancients did not leave behind warnings for no reason. They encoded their knowledge not to impress us, but to prepare us for this moment, this crossroads, this remembrance. And the question remains, will we listen? Do you believe humanity is entering a cycle of awakening? Like and share this video with those who are seeking truth beneath the surface. The voices of the ancients are returning through us. The story returns to us, not as it was, but as it must be filtered through time, distorted by forgetting, yet glowing at the edges like a golden thread rediscovered in the fabric of our world. The Great Flood was not only a deluge of water, but a deluge of silence. It swept away not just cities and names, but the rhythm of a world that once moved with the breath of the stars. It was, as all true catastrophes are, a veil, and behind that veil was not darkness, but a buried light. A light that through symbol, story, and soul refuses to die. That light is returning, and in its return, we remember something profound we were never meant to forget. The stones whisper, because they are waiting. The myths endure, because they are maps. The symbols awaken, because they are seeds planted not just in temples, but in the deep soil of human consciousness. In you. For what if the flood was not only engineered to erase a supercivilization, but to test whether its echo could survive in us? This is the transformational echo. The recognition that the lost world was not truly lost, it became us. The blood that courses through your veins remembers the chant of Lemuria, the starlight of Atlantis, the geometry of Kemet. Your cells hum with forgotten frequencies. Your dreams flicker with glyphs older than any alphabet. The knowledge is not external, it is encrypted within your being. The ark, too, was never just a vessel of wood or stone. It is the sacred container of your body, the resonance chamber of your heart, the divine blueprint etched in your bones. The flood did not erase the supercivilization. It disguised it as you. You are the survivor. You are the continuity. You are the one who now carries the burden and the gift of remembrance. To walk the earth now is to walk the bones of giants. But more than that, it is to walk as one of them reborn. The ancients did not fall. They became us, scattered like sparks into the future, waiting for this precise moment of reactivation. And now, the sacred circuit begins to close. The lost is being found. The forgotten is awakening. The drowned world is rising, not from the sea, but from within. The question is not whether the Great Flood was real. The question is whether you will hear its echo and what you will do with that knowledge. This is not just history, it is initiation. The myths are not over. The story is not sealed. You are not here by accident. You have found this tale because somewhere deep beneath the surface of your life, the waters have begun to part. The symbols are moving again. The blueprint is reassembling, and the choice is yours. Will you return to sleep lulled by the lullaby of modern illusions, or will you rise, arc-bearer, frequency holder, child of the stars, and become the remembering? The flood came. It silenced a civilization, but it could not silence truth. Now it moves again, not in water, but in you. And the world once drowned waits for its song to be sung once more.